The maitre d' barely concealed his smirk as he gestured toward the exit. People like you aren't welcome here. He believed he was untouchable, that Pam Bondi would quietly accept the humiliation and leave. But within minutes, the entire restaurant would be frozen in stunned silence, and the same man who had dismissed her would be desperately searching for a way to undo his mistake. By the time it was over, he would regret every word he had spoken. Pam Bondi entered the elegant bistro expecting nothing more than a peaceful dinner, a rare respite from the relentless political storms that followed her everywhere. She wasn't there to make a scene, wasn't seeking attention, just a quiet meal. Yet from the moment she stepped inside, she sensed something was off. Conversations hushed, glances darted in her direction, and in the far corner, a well-dressed man, clearly the manager, exchanged a knowing look with a waiter. Brushing off the unease, Pam followed the hostess to her reserved table. The service was sluggish, unusually so. Her waiter barely acknowledged her, responding with clipped phrases before vanishing for long stretches. Patrons who had arrived after her were already savoring their meals, while her table remained conspicuously empty. At first, she assumed it was just poor service. But then, the moment of reckoning arrived. The manager strode over, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor with purpose. His expression wasn't one of hospitality. It was smug, dripping with contempt, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. "We have a policy," he announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, "against serving people like you." A hush fell over the room. Pam lifted an eyebrow, tilting her head slightly. "Excuse me." The manager crossed his arms, his smirk widening. "We don't cater to political disruptors here. You think you can just walk in and act like you belong?" A ripple of whispers spread through the restaurant. Some diners exchanged confused glances, while others, already recording on their phones, knew precisely what was happening. Pam Bondi, one of the most recognizable conservative figures in the country, was being targeted, not for causing a disturbance, not for violating any policy, but simply for existing in a space where this man decided she didn't belong. She exhaled slowly, her composure unwavering. "Is that so?" Her gaze locked onto his. The manager nodded smugly. "That's right. You and your kind aren't welcome here." For a fleeting moment, there was absolute silence. The restaurant, once filled with the gentle hum of conversations and clinking silverware, now felt like a courtroom awaiting its verdict. No one knew what was about to happen, but what they were about to witness, no one would ever forget. The manager stood tall, arms crossed, soaking in the attention. He expected her to shrink, to mumble an excuse, grab her coat, and leave in shame. But Pam Bondi wasn't just another diner. She wasn't someone who crumbled under pressure. She had prosecuted criminals, taken on the toughest adversaries, and won. And now she was staring down a man who thought he could embarrass her over a dinner reservation. Big mistake. Pam didn't flinch. She simply folded her hands on the table, tilting her head slightly, studying him the way she had studied countless witnesses on the stand. Her voice was smooth but firm. "So you're refusing me service because of my political beliefs?" The manager shrugged. "It's my restaurant. I can refuse service to anyone I want." Pam let out a small, knowing chuckle. "Actually, you can't. That's not how the law works." The smirk faltered slightly. The room had gone deathly quiet now. Every phone was pointed in their direction. The entire restaurant was watching, waiting. Pam leaned in slightly. "The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, or political affiliation in public accommodations. You, my friend, are violating federal law." The manager's face paled. She continued, voice calm but razor sharp. "This isn't just about denying me dinner. It's about whether businesses can discriminate against paying customers based on personal bias. Today it's me. Who's next?" A murmur of agreement spread through the restaurant. Some customers nodded, others whispered among themselves, realizing they were witnessing something that could go viral in seconds. The manager's confidence wavered. "Look, Pam raised a hand, cutting him off. "No, let's be clear. You made a choice, and choices have consequences." She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and began recording. The manager's breath hitched. Go ahead, she said, holding up the phone. Tell the whole world why you think it's acceptable to deny service based on political views. His face turned a deep shade of red. He turned to a waiter. Call security. Pam smirked. Already did. The restaurant was suffocating under the weight of the moment. The manager had assumed she would storm out, flustered and defeated. Instead, he was the one backed into a corner, and he knew it. A security guard hesitated at the edge of the scene, glancing nervously between Pam and the manager. The last thing he wanted was to be caught on video in a discrimination lawsuit. Pam turned the camera toward him. Officer, could you clarify something? Are you refusing service to a customer based on political beliefs? Because I'd love to have that statement on record. The guard shifted uncomfortably. He looked to the manager for direction, but the man, who had just moments ago basked in his own arrogance, was now at a loss for words. A woman at a nearby table cleared her throat. She has a point. Another man nodded. So what, you're kicking her out because you don't like her opinions? What happened to freedom of speech? The crowd was turning against him. Pam seized the moment. You want me gone? She asked, still composed. Then call the police. Let's see how well it plays in the news when law enforcement has to explain why a restaurant is discriminating against a former Attorney General of the United States. The manager's face drained of color. Now it was a crisis. This wasn't just a dispute. It was a headline waiting to explode. The restaurant door swung open. 2 officers entered, scanning the room. The manager sighed in relief until he saw Pam's unshaken expression, as if she had expected this all along. We got a call about a disturbance, one officer said. Pam turned the camera toward them. Yes, officer. This establishment is refusing service based on political discrimination. I have everything recorded and am prepared to file a formal complaint. The officers exchanged a glance. They already knew this was a legal minefield. Sir, one officer said to the manager, do you understand the trouble you're in? The manager stammered. I didn't mean... Pam's gaze was steady. You just what? Thought you could get away with it? The silence was suffocating. The officer sighed. Sir, I suggest you fix this. The manager swallowed hard. His pride fought against his survival instincts, but self-preservation won. In the quietest, most reluctant voice imaginable, he muttered, I apologize. Pam arched an eyebrow. Didn't quite catch that. The officer shot him a look. The manager swallowed his pride and spoke louder. I apologize, Miss Bondi. I was wrong. Pam smirked, turned off her phone, and picked up her bag. That'll do. The restaurant exhaled as one. Then a slow clap started. It grew. Then the entire restaurant stood, applauding Pam Bondi as she walked out, not just as a customer who had been wronged, but as a woman who had stood her ground and won.